doing, man?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm in the midst of a podcast legend, man.
Oh.
A podcast expert, man.
Sure. An amateur podcast expert, I guess, if you want. That's a contradiction, but I think that's the best description of it. I do a lot of amateur. I'm an expert at amateur podcasts, indie podcasts.
I'm not mad. That should go on the resume. It should go right at the top.
Sure. I mean, if I ever apply for actual jobs to make real money in podcasting, then sure, I'll put that on the resume.
Absolutely. Welcome to Closed Pinot, man, where we use wine as a vehicle for conversation, and it's the only place we can drink and drive. Today I have a podcast amateur expert, man, Derek, man. How you doing, man?
Good. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited. I don't know what to expect, really, which is exciting. I love that.
Yeah, man. It's a conversation amongst friends, man.
Yeah,
old friends, man. So,
for sure.
You know, we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah, I'm used to having like really specific subject matter for every podcast that I do. Even the ones that I guest on are usually like, you're talking about a specific episode of this specific thing.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to just be like, just shooting the shit. Like, that's great. I love that.
It's like one of those random episodes of TV. It's like, we're just going for the ride.
Yeah, sure. Just here for the ride.
I love it, man. So, it's the part where I usually let the guests just tell the people about yourself. So, the floor is yours, man.
Oh, boy. I guess I'm mostly here because I am an amateur podcast expert. So I do a lot of podcasts. I have 3 of them currently going. The most recent one that I do is called Gimmicks, which you've been on, which is a podcast that looks at the kind of high concept, experimental, structure breaking gimmick episodes of TV. And it's a different show every week, different guest every week. So there's like kind of a different flavor to every episode, which is fun. We get to look at like the musical episodes and the noir episodes and the weird like homage episodes of any given show of any genre. I also do Walloping Web Snappers, which is a Spiderman podcast, specifically diving into every Spiderman cartoon ever made. So doesn't matter what when it came out or what it is, as long as it is a cartoon with Spider-Man in it, we're covering it one way or another. And then also a monthly podcast called Falling with Style, which is a monthly podcast that looks at every Pixar movie chronologically. And that's what I do a lot of, and obviously, as you can tell, it's all kind of very like TV and media centric, mostly. A little bit of movies, but mostly TV stuff, and that's kind of where a lot of my background interests are in things. That's like a thing that I've been interested in since I was a little kid. Like, you have people that like are really hard on like film stuff, and I love like film stuff, but I think my knowledge base and the thing I've always been interested in for such a long time has been television historically and like how it's made and things like that. And I think the reason like I did English and film and journalism in college, and I think all of those things, oddly enough, even though it was hard to use those things to get a real job, it did help a lot, I think, with sort of everything that I do for fun, and make a tiny little minorest bit of money off of it sometimes. I'm sure there's more things to that, but that's the main thing.
But you said an important thing is that you're a TV guy too over like movies.
Yeah.
You know how many times that like I go out, you go hang out with different people. It's like, yo, have you seen this movie? And it's like a really popular movie.
Right.
Like everyone should have seen the movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, sorry.
Sure.
I'm not the movie guy, but I'm the TV series guy.
Yeah, that's like whenever people are like, what are your favorite movies? And like I have a few that I throw out there, but they're not like, it's like Terminator and Terminator 2 and Spider-Man 2 and like Mean Girls and Back to the Future are like among my favorite movies. And there's plenty of like really great art house movies that I've seen, and that, like I said, I did film in college, so like I've seen plenty of stuff through that. But like the things that I feel like define who I am more are more like my TV interests, and those things are things that are vary a lot more widely, and are just, I think, more for me. They're always like more interesting to talk about,
Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think that we like TV series more than film? I guess for me, it's kind of spread out, and I can kind of control how much information I'm getting. Whereas in a movie, I have to sit there and watch the entire movie to get the entire thing.
Sure.
And I don't want to dedicate like 2 hours to something,
Yeah, well, I think nowadays, especially because our attention spans are so much shorter than they used to be. But, like, I think for me, because I love movies too. It's just, I think with TV, I think for me there's something to long-form narrative storytelling, which isn't even to say that like it has to be like one long story, just that whether it's a serialized thing or whether it's super episodic, just sticking with the same sort of group of characters or in the same world for like what can, if for some TV shows, be years and years at a time, you get to know them and know that world so much more intimately than you ever could and explore it so deeply, more deeply than you could in like a movie or even a movie series, you know?
Yeah.
Like, the MCU is a long-form narrative story through a series of movies, but even still, it's only really recently that they've like explored a lot of like the in-depth things through like their TV shows that they've done.
Yeah.
And I think it is because, you know, you do have to be pretty self-contained in each movie. Whereas a TV show, like, you have a lot more avenues to explore the little, like, the minutiae of the world and the characters and some side characters that you encounter that, like, maybe they didn't intend to be a major one, but it's like, well, this works, so now we can have a whole episode devoted to them, and now they're a main character next season. And it's, like, something you can only do if you are telling your story over a very long period of time.
Yeah. I don't know how to explain it, but that sounds right. That sounds exactly how it is, because that's the thing too, is in movies, like, a lot of times there's a character that you're like, I wish they had more time to talk about this person.
Sure.
Where in TV series, it's like you can dedicate an entire episode to that person, and like now I get the information I want, but then you can circle back to the main storyline. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I like that about TV series, and it's not to say that I don't like movies.
Oh yeah.
Like, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is like one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite movie of all time.
Sure.
But it also matches everything I like about TV too, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. I mean, like, who doesn't like movies, right? Like, that's almost kind of like the default thing. Like, you can't not. Like, there's always going to be a movie out there for you.
Right.
So like, yeah, it's not so much that like movies bad. It is just sort of like, if I have a preference, and really knowledge based more than anything, it's TV. And I think like the same thing with like sort of production of it and everything, and like the background. Like, I'm always so interested. I like production of film too. I like the production of any like multimedia thing. I think all of those stories can be really interesting, and how like stories themselves are crafted, and the technical side of it. But I think the thing that I've always been fascinated with TV, especially, not as much now because the way things are done, but for such a long time, so much of TV was just done on the fly and on such a tight budget, and I think that would often yield like really weird things. That's how you get like your bottle episodes and your weird clip shows and stuff. And I think the inventiveness that you have to have in television, again, less so now because now it's a lot of like 8-episode seasons that are like $1 billion an episode, right? But which is why like a lot of streaming services are like collapsing because they spend too much money on it. But
that's another definitely.
But like, yeah, I think all that stuff is so interesting because it always yields like fascinating stories and often like a lot of like really juicy behind the scenes drama that like you get in movies too, but you get especially in TV because they are working like year round together, you know.
That's true. All right, man. Now I asked you, you know, I gave you the option, like, you know, you're not a wine person, but you know, you're up for the game.
Yeah, I like wine. Just it's like bourbon's my top, and I like beer after that, and then wine is like what I have with meals and stuff. But sometimes I'm really into wine. But I'm not picky, basically.
That's not bad, man. All right, so today we have, let's see, Ecco Domani. It's a Pinot Grigio. Okay. Any feelings about that?
Not really. I found that I'm more of a red guy now than I used to be, but like I don't have an issue with white wine. Just I feel like I like turned 30 and was just like, I just need red wine all the time. And I don't know where that came from, but that's where I'm at now.
I wish that would be me. Like I keep searching for like the perfect red wine for me, and I'm like, but they're all so dry. They're all so dry. And I feel like I need to be eating something. Yeah. When I drink it, like I just can't, because you know, man, like college, we're going for consumption, we're not going for like tasting. For sure. You know what I'm saying? We're going for consumption, but so I can't do that with red wine. And I'm like, with white wines, I'm like, all right, this is a party. but like red wine's like one glass, I'm like, let's just switch to something else.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
Okay, not bad.
It smells like white wine that I have.
Yeah, it does, man. Cheers. It's not bad.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
It's not bad. it's there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
there. So we went to college together, man. I have a lot of people that that have been on here. You know, Tommy, Kathy have been sitting in the same seats as you.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy hasn't been on this couch, and she was in one of the earlier forms.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, we went to Right Off Making Man, and we took a lot of classes together.
Mm-hmm.
I always had to go back and just talk about that English department. What's your thoughts on some of those classes, man? Some of those classes, I was like, I really had a good time, and then there was some where I was like, this is a slog.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's college, right? Like,
yeah.
It's always kind of up and down. I think it's interesting because I do think that like I'm thankful of having some of the classes that were a slog because it helped me know what I wasn't interested in and like what I wouldn't want to do. Because there would be some classes like I never would have thought that I would have been interested in King Arthur, but the King Arthur class that I took was fantastic. That was one of my favorite ones, and it wasn't even so much because I was interested in like the King Arthur mythology, but just that it was just an interesting class to see how it's been adapted over the years and the history, and how it's sort of played into like.
Who was the professor for them?
Call.
I love her.
Yeah, every class that she did was fantastic.
I love her. I had her for Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I did too. Yeah.
She was fine. She was so great.
Yeah, she was fantastic. She was fantastic. And I've been in like a little bit in touch with her, not in the past couple of years, but a little bit since college. Yeah, seriously, every class that she did was great.
Were you in the Chaucer class with me? The Canterbury Tales class with me?
I think I took that, so I would have had to have been there with you because we were in the same year. Yeah.
That was the one for me. I was like, last year, and I'm like, what do I gotta take? You got to the Canterbury Tales. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I used to sit in a circle and read it. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't a fan. I mean, I'm not a fan of like a lot of the Middle English type stuff like that. I guess that was technically Middle English, right?
Yeah.
English major, I don't remember. Yeah, no, I don't. It's like I don't remember exactly how I felt then. I think like I didn't like it, but also it was senior year, and I was like totally like I'm done. It's fine.
You know what time it was.
Yeah, and like now I still kind of have like a retroactive appreciation for having learned about it because like I can say that I have, and I know that that's a thing that I've experienced, and I don't have to ever look back on it. It's just
but
like,
the appreciation is there.
I read Canterbury Tales, and it's like that's a thing I can knock off. Not really for me. Didn't really do it for me. It doesn't influence my writing or anything like that at this point.
Under no circumstance.
Yeah. That's kind of my view on a lot of them. There was really never a class that I took that was like that I like regretted taking. I guess is the thing. It really was just sort of like, okay, that happened. Well, I may never use that again in the rest of my life, but who knows what I will,
Who knows? I might be on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
A question might pop up, and there it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do remember, what was it called? It was like when they had like their baked treats and coffee, like at some point, like the English department.
Oh yeah, it was like our last year as well.
Yeah.
And we all went there, and I hung out with the professors and stuff. I forgot what that was, man.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but
that was cool.
Yeah, that was little things like that. I think the personalities in the English department are what I remember the most, like of the professors.
I think there was no more wacky group than the English department. Like,
I love it.
Like there was Cole, Goodwin. The top of the map was Goodwin because
I love it.
Some of her classes were just like, I'm like, I can't do this, but she's such a nice lady.
Yeah.
It's like she's like the nicest lady possible.
Yeah.
Cat Wilder was really nice. I loved her.
Professor Scott too.
Yep. Professor Gibson was there for like a couple of years. He was cool. Like just a wacky, weird group of people.
Which is so funny because like there was there were art professors on campus, there was theater professors, but like none of them were, and some people, there would be some weird personalities on campus, but like in terms of like a concentrated group of them, that English department was like top of the ladder for it. Just
super eccentric. The
strange diversity of like who everyone was, and that nobody really fit together there, but they also kind of did because they all didn't fit together. It's good times.
The Misfits is what they were. They were the Misfits.
Absolutely.
All right, so you do a lot of podcasts, man. That's what we've established about now. That you do a lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
What got you into podcasts in the beginning?
Sure. So for a few years, really soon after college, I started writing for a website called KSite TV, which my friend Craig ran. He's done a lot. He's done tons of fan sites through the years. And he did like KryptonSite.com. Anybody who knows Smallville would know KryptonSite because that was the main fan site for it. And so KSite TV was sort of like his general entertainment news site that he did. And it is a good website in that it's even though it's very small and very few people write for it, Craig was always a really good editor, and there's so many websites out now that just do clickbait stuff and just make up shit all the time.
Yeah.
And he was always very diligent about I would rather have a well-sourced article than that doesn't get many hits than a fake article or making up bullshit that gets a ton of hits, because what's the point? Why are we doing this? And so that was a really great avenue for me. I just connected with him on over the internet, and when he was looking for writers, I was I can write, so great. And that was a really fun way to sort of learn how to talk about TV through that. There's all of my stuff I think is still online. Some of the early stuff not good.
Yeah.
But it was a great place for me to kind of work out my voice and everything, and that encouraged me to watch more stuff for that, since I would be reviewing it or talking about news for it, and also reading other reviews just to improve upon how I write and everything.
Yeah.
I took it very seriously. I did consider for a period of time is that the career path I'd want to try to go down. Obviously it's a really hard one to make a living off of.
Right.
So even knowing that, do I want to try to eventually maybe do that for a website professionally? Because it was all volunteer, so I had a lot of freedom to just experiment and stuff, which was great because it was basically volunteer. But I kind of realized over time that I don't know that I just writing a review every week, because I really in-depth analysis and stuff like that, and so all my articles would be thousands of words long, and you can't do that to yourself if you want to write multiple ones of those every week. And also a lot of people on the internet, there's a place for those types of pop culture analytical stuff, but it's a pretty niche thing. A lot of people just reading recaps. A lot of people just reading short things. Not a lot of people reading whole gigantic essays.
Right.
So it's a very small market, and it's exhausting, if you have a day job along with it. But all of that is to say that while I was working with that group there, we did experiment with sort of audio type things that were basically podcasts. I think it was 2014. We did a round table about Arrow, because that was still brand new at the time, and we did it audio form, and I managed it. I edited all of it. That was my first time editing audio. I've done film editing and stuff before then, because I took film in college and I done it on the side. So audio editing is obviously different, but it's similar if you know the basics, right? So I kind of worked with that, and I enjoyed doing that a lot, and was just kind of learning it by fly by the seat of my pants for that. We did a Smallville retrospective and commentary one for the anniversary, I think a year or two after that. And there were never things that took off as podcasts, but as the way to experiment with doing with other people. That was a great avenue to do it, and I was I really like this. And I think because I had that background, when I made other friends, I think the first podcast that I was just invited on was Ranger Command Power Hour, which is a Power Rangers podcast, and I had just connected with Eric Berry, who was kind of the main host of that online. And I think when he saw that I had done podcast stuff before, and that we got along, he was do you just want to guest my podcast for an episode? I'm looking for people to help recap this episode. And I kind of caught the real podcasting bug from that, because it was really fun. And I mean, from there I just kind of would guest periodically on that show specifically. I got more technology. I started practicing with it and stuff like that, and figure out what the best places to record and how to record, what kind of mics to use, and researching that. And then in end of 2018, I was like, I really want to start a podcast myself, because everyone who starts guesting on podcasts want to start a podcast.
Right,
That's how it is. And I'm also like, you know, I'm a I'm a single man in the years in the 2020s. Like, we all started podcasts at this point, right?
This
like,
is what we do.
This is what we do.
Yeah.
So I approached my friend Doug, who had done some podcasting already. He was on a Pokemon podcast and guested on other podcasts. And I was like, we both like Spider-Man. Do you want to do some kind of Spider-Man podcast? And he was like, yeah, sure. And it was like a match made in heaven, honestly. Like, we both worked together really well.
Yeah.
And in like the beginning of 2019, that's when we launched Walloping Web Snappers. And that's been a whole journey, because we're in like our 4th year of it now, and it's changed. It's changed a lot in some ways, but also not at all in other ways. But you know, from there, I think it's just refined how I did it, and now I do too much of it. So
that's cool, man. Because yeah, I think what I'm hearing too is like you're like me, and you like to talk about things. Like, you like to talk in depth about stuff. Like, hey, did you get the symbolism here? Did you see the different nuances here? Did you catch the Easter egg here? So I like, and it's hard to find the people to talk that with, like, you know, on a regular day-to-day basis. So the next best thing to do is start a podcast.
Yeah.
You just at least get the information out of you, and then put it out there and hope that somebody else sees it.
Exactly. I love doing like research and stuff, and so it's sort of like, it gives you a reason to read about cool things that I like and would want to read about anyway, and then I can also share that with people without it being annoying. Like, hey, we're starting a conversation, can I just tell you the random trivia about a TV show? Like, now there's an avenue for it. There's a reason that people are expecting it. So,
that's dope, man. So, starting with Walloping Web Snappers, every Spider-Man cartoon, and that dates back to how far back?
The 60s, so 1967 was the first Spider-Man cartoon, not long after Spider-Man first was created in the comics.
Yeah. And so, now when you say, now do you do like specific episodes, or do you like go through them chronologically, or how do y'all choose episodes?
Yeah, we decided really early that chronologically wouldn't be a good idea, because there are some shows that have longer runs than others, and some of them we wouldn't want to just be spending like 2 years doing the same show that nobody maybe would be interested in.
Right.
And also, like, a lot of people our age, people in their 30s, they're familiar with the 90s show and might not be familiar with other stuff, and might listen to our podcast about that, but not anything else, you know.
Right.
So, you know, it would take a long time to get to that point if we started from the beginning. So we decided to kind of do a thing where we do a chunk of episodes of a show and jump around. So like, we'll do, like, for example, we started with the first season of the 90s show, because we knew that would get a lot of initial interest from our friends and people that know us our age, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we'll do one season of it, and then we'll shift. Sometimes we'll shift to like a handful of episodes of a very old show, or like an 80s show or something like that. Or like if it's a show that only ran for like 24 episodes, we'll do like 4 to 6 of them, so that we can spread it out over time, and then do another season of another show.
Gotcha.
So like we've at this point we've covered a big swath of them. We've covered like 3 seasons of the 90s show. We've covered all of Spectacular Spider-Man, all of Spider-Man Unlimited, a chunk of the 60s show, the first season of Amazing Friends, like a bunch of Spider-Woman, like a whole chunk of them, but there's still shows that we haven't gotten to yet, just because there's so many of them. And we also will do like specials and stuff, so like we did like the Lego Spider-Man like mini movie thing at one point. We've done like Marvel Rising, because Spider-Gwen is a character in a couple of them. Like we kind of bend the rules of like what counts as a Spider-Man cartoon. Any Spider-Person that appears in something could reasonably be on our show, because that gives us a little bit of like a reprieve from always being just Spider-Man named shows, you know.
That's cool, man. Do you have a preference of which Spider-Man, like which series kind of gets the most excitement out of you?
My personal favorite is Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay.
I think
what years was that?
That came out in 2008.
Okay.
And it only ran for 2 seasons and was canceled for like very stupid copyright, or not copyright, like rights-related, licensing-related reasons that we go very in depth.
Spider-Man is like the one series that just has the biggest issues with licensing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And that show is very good. I always recommend it to anybody. It's just a good cartoon, like, period, and it does really great things. It's like my like quintessential what I want from a Spider-Man cartoon.
Yeah.
And like I was an adult when it came out, so it's not even a thing of nostalgia. I just think it is a very good cartoon.
Yeah.
That's like my personal favorite. There's other like weird ones that I've come to enjoy. Like obviously I grew up with the '90s show,
Sure.
and I have a lot of love for it still. I think that in a lot of ways that show is still very good, but in a lot of other ways it's also very dated and
Sure.
stuff like that too.
Yeah.
And there's some other ones that I just like have. I found that I have a lot of enjoyment for like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, which is like not a good show, but it's so fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Same with Spider-Woman too, which I didn't even know existed before we did our podcast.
That's cool.
And that show is so bananas and weird. I just love it because it's just so stupid, but it also kind of seems to know that it's kind of stupid. So,
yeah. I like self-aware shows where like we're also in on the joke,
yeah.
and so just hop along with us.
Yeah, for sure.
Any show that's like like really really bad.
Funny enough, there isn't any that are like really really bad because I think because Spider-Man's always fun, so we always find something in it that's interesting. But I have two answers for this. I think we haven't covered a lot of it, but the 1981 show I think is a little bit boring.
Okay.
And weirdly, it's a controversial answer, but we're at the time of this recording, we're in the middle of the MTV show that came out in 2003.
The CGI one?
The CGI one,
yeah.
And that one, it's like, I remember watching it when it was out and thinking it was okay and kind of cool that it existed, and I've like have a lot less love for it now, like digging into it, because it's honestly like at times a really like abysmally bad show.
Yeah.
Like the way that it's like aggressively like mean-spirited and like nihilistic and just like not fun to watch and just poorly written in general.
Which I feel like it's the opposite of Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like Spider-Man that sounds like some Batman stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Because like that's like the main difference between like Marvel and like DC as a whole, is where DC is like, what was me? Everything is dark. Like backgrounds are dark. Everything's just like despair.
Yeah, sure.
Like MCU has a way of, even if the story is dark, everything else in the background is bright.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a contrast to the way they like display things.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, which is funny because a lot of DC stuff before the movie stuff started happening was like the brighter, sillier stuff because they have Superman and things like that. But that's the way the world is now. It's so weird. But yeah, it's not a fun show.
Yeah.
There are still good things of it, and honestly, like the kind of back half that we've been covering has been much better than the first half.
Yeah.
But it's still like, I appreciate that it exists. It's kind of cool that MTV did like kind of an adult-oriented Spider-Man show that was in CGI, just because like that's not a thing that'll happen nowadays.
Right.
The way that the corporations have such a kind of a tight lid and control of everything.
Yeah.
So it's cool that it exists in that form because nothing else like that will ever exist, but it's not very good.
And I think that's the cool thing about like when you like a series or like a brand, like you can accept when something that great, but you can acknowledge that it is its existence and what it performs as its own entity.
Yeah, I mean that's always been that's always been my approach to everything that I kind of try to do is like I've never liked the sort of very like kind of exhausting like archaic like nerd approach of just like ranting about stuff and raving about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that there's always nuance to everything and there's always interesting things to talk about.
Yeah.
About everything. There are certainly things that I do hate with a fiery passion, but it has to be like for very specific reasons, or it has to be just like really bad.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to say I approach things like with positivity all the time because I think that like that's not the wrong idea. That's not the right idea. Like that's not like because you can't do that because some things are kind of bad and you have to acknowledge that. But I do try to like always meet something where it's at, and it's sort of like this might never have been the kind of show that I wanted it. This might be aimed at a wildly different audience than I am. As long as I can acknowledge that and sort of I can still sort of find something interesting to talk about with it. I actually had like for a little while a YouTube like video essay show that I did called Second Chance. I had to just sort of retire that because it was a lot of work to put that together. But the whole thing with it was sort of like finding things that are either really considered bad or divisive, and sort of like finding like either what's good about it, or in more cases than not, just sort of like what was the intent, why does this thing exist? And usually when you do that, you can kind of be like, okay, I kind of get it now. I might not like it, but I can get it. And those conversations, I think, are way more interesting than just tearing it apart, you know?
And I think that comes with, like, age, too, as we get older. Like, some things in the past that we were like, this is awful, but it's because we haven't had, like, life experience, so we just didn't get it because we were younger. And you get older, and you're like, oh, that's what they're supposed to be. Yeah. That's what you're trying to tell me. Like, no, I get it now. I still don't like the show, but, like, I get what you're trying to tell me.
For sure. Although there's also lots of like old nerds that I know that are still just like super annoying and scream about stuff and don't seem to understand. So I would hope it's with age, but it doesn't seem to be sometimes.
Gimmicks, man.
Yeah.
Gimmicks. I was a guest on Gimmicks. I was nervous. I'm gonna be honest.
Sure.
I was really nervous because I didn't know what kind of energy to bring. I didn't know, like, you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. But I had fun. Because we got to talk Cowboy Bebop, and that's, you know, you got to watch it for the first time. I'm actually want to know, how do you feel about it?
I love it. I watched everything except for the movie. I haven't seen the movie yet.
Oh, you gotta watch the movie.
I know. I want to. I'm going to. I just forgot to do it, and I haven't done it yet.
But we had the best fight in the series.
Nice.
It's so good. Choreographed, the cinematography. Oh my god.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I'm sure. I'm really excited. I mean, it's nice because like I don't have any other Cowboy Bebop stuff to watch, so I'm like, well, that's my last thing, and then I'm done with it.
Yeah, don't watch a live series, please. you were just talking about how, like, you know, you go in with positivity. I tried that and I was burned heavily.
Oh
no. But yeah, I'm glad that I was able to, you know, get at least the engine started to watch the series.
For sure. I mean, that's one of the things, like, one of my sort of secret goals of Gimmicks. In a lot of cases, it's just to get help because I want to talk about shows that I don't have any other avenue to talk about. But the other thing is, like, to give me things to watch. Because there's so much content out there, you know, that it's like, sometimes it's sort of hard to know what you want to get to. And I think for me, I'm very goal-oriented, so sometimes it's sort of like, I could watch the show, or I could watch something that I have to watch for a podcast anyway. And it's like, well, you know, if I have Gimmicks, I can just be like, I want to watch this show. Let's do an episode on it that'll force me to watch it. That worked for Cowboy Bebop because I could have just watched that one episode, but that one episode was really good, and so I was like, I'm going to watch the whole thing, and it was very good. I really liked it a lot. And I don't watch a ton of anime, so to, you know, have that sort of like on my like knocked off of my to-do list finally is really exciting. But it really is like unlike any other show I've ever seen. But so enjoyable and something that I know I could recommend to other friends that don't watch a lot of anime would still enjoy it.
It's definitely a gateway. It's one of those ones where it's like, if you don't watch it, if you take away the fact that it's animated per se, it's just a regular adult show with adult themes, and for the most part was really ahead of its time.
Yeah, definitely.
But Gimmicks likes to focus on those episodes that kind of remove themselves from the actual show itself, and put itself in like if this is the bubble, like it goes outside the bubble for a little bit before popping back in. Right. So what was the idea behind that? Like to start, like how did what was the first episode where you're like, let's just make this a podcast?
There's a few of them. Those are episodes that I always liked anyway. Like I think that kind of goes part and parcel with like my love of TV and like the long form storytelling thing is like the fact that you can have episodes like that are just weird and that just happen, you know, weird from one or another. And so I was always attracted to that. I think that was just sort of part of my interest in TV production. So there's very rarely an episode that's like an experimental one that I won't like. There might be some that don't work for me, or that I don't think are very as good, but I'm still going to enjoy them because I love the swing. So that's always been a thing in my background anyway. I think when I decided, what got me to finally like make it a podcast, for one, there were kind of a weird array of answers. Both Buffy and Community, just anytime I revisit those, both of those shows do so many high concept episodes that are all very good and like very notable. So that's a main factor. But then I think more recently, there was an episode of Ted Lasso that came out that was really divisive because it was like I already have done an episode on it. It was called Beard After Hours, and it focused on one character, and it was like an homage to the Scorsese movie After Hours. It was a weird surrealist thing, and like a lot of people really hated that episode, and anyone can hate anything, but the reasons behind it seem to be like people forgot like what TV was, where it's just like, well, this isn't moving the story along, and it's just like, because you're just hanging out with one character for a night. It's an episode of television, like you're allowed to do that. And so I kind of wanted, so I was like, what if I could do a podcast and kind of explore all the instances where that kind of thing happens. And WandaVision was the same way too, actually, I think was what got me thinking, because that whole show, every episode of that is kind of a different high concept gimmick, and there were a lot of weird conversations of people just like not understanding that like not every single thing that happens in every scene of every episode has to like move some major plot along. Some of it can be sort of like for the weird fun of it and just the experimentation of it, you know.
I remember when that came out, people were like really confused.
Yeah.
Like they were like, I don't understand. Like what am I supposed to like? No, it's everything doesn't always have to be moving a story forward.
Right, and it's like, and then I think a lot of people sort of equate like plot momentum with like good storytelling, and like that's not necessarily. It's like sometimes it is just about hanging out with the characters or playing with an idea. You know, not everything necessarily has to have an endpoint to it, and like that thing with WandaVision is like it did have an endpoint, but you were just sort of playing around in these worlds a little bit at first for the sake of sort of the building the kind of background and sort of a misdirect in a way. In a way that I think was really clever, and is also a thing you can only do in TV. Like, so if they're, you know, pivoting from just having movies to also doing TV, then why not do something that you could never do in a Marvel movie, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, gimmicks, what are your favorite gimmicks? Like, what are, like, when you look for an episode like that, what's gonna be like? Is it musicals? Is it bottle episodes? Like, what really excites you when it comes to gimmicks?
I really like Rashomon episodes. So those are the ones where, you know, you're getting the same story told from multiple perspectives. Because I think that there's many different ways that you can do that, and all of them are going to be kind of fun and interesting, and often like give you a lot of character exploration. Those are always my favorites. So we did an X-Files, on the X-Files Rashomon episode recently, Bad Blood, and that was really fun to do. And bottle episodes, I mean, that's such a wide umbrella, but like any kind of episode that is very stripped down are always something that I really love, because it's usually like, oftentimes the reasoning behind it production-wise is interesting to read about, because it usually is like, we had to do this because of budget, or like this actor broke their leg and we had to do it at a room or something. But also, like, I think it ends up being kind of a testament to like what you can do with just people like talking to each other, you know? Like oftentimes those episodes are just like little one-act plays. And I find that really fascinating to see on TV, and I think it's sort of like adds to the idea that like you don't need your episodes of television to necessarily be millions of dollars to be good. It can just be a very stripped down sort of thing. But yeah, I would say those are my kind of two favorite styles.
I'm trying to think, because I'm thinking of an episode of Family Guy that came out when we were in college. I think it was the one where like Brian Stewie gets stuck in the bank. And like I think that's episode like a bottle episode where they're just stuck there like the entire episode. And I remember watching that and I was like, why did they do this? But now I feel like I want to go back and be like, why did they do this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because something like that, it probably was like that wasn't like a budget reason. Like that was probably like they made a conscious choice to challenge themselves to do an episode where it's just two people talking in a room the entire time, even though it's like a crazy cartoon. And I love that stuff too, because it's like if you're a creator, I want you to feel you know, empowered to make big swings.
Step outside your normal creed. Because Family Guy had that thing where they were in this lull where like they were doing the same thing over and over and over. So when they did that one and the one where it's the mansion party with James Woods. That's that two-parter. That's a really good. I really love that one. So when they do stuff like that, I'm like, okay, cool. They're trying to step outside of what they normally do, and I like those. Is there any, like, so you said Buffy and Community do a really good job of, those. Is there any other show that does a good job of those? Off the top of my head, I think like Psych does pretty good episodes.
Yeah, in the Psych's one, I fell off of Psych like very early into it because I had a pretty long run, and I only watched the first couple of seasons of it. But that's one that is on the list to do at some point, and people have pitched episodes of that, so I'll definitely do those because they have so many of them. Yeah, Psych's a good one. This is a weird pull because it's like not available to watch anywhere, but like the show Moonlighting from the 80s.
Okay.
I've been watching, I still need to finish my watch through of it because I'd never seen it before. And there's a lot of like rights issues and stuff, so like it's not streaming anywhere. It's actually really hard to find. Like you can't find it legally. You have to find it legally. Yeah. But like it was like Bruce Willis's breakout role.
Oh, okay.
So it was Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd, and it's just like a detective show. But for being the show from like '85, they did a really solid handful of fascinating, like super high concept things that feel very modern. Like they did their kind of noir dream episode. They did like a Shakespeare episode where they all spoke in iambic pentameter through the entire episode. Like stuff like that. I think that's really fascinating. And it did a handful that are all very good. And like I think that one is just interesting because again, it's like from an era of TV where you weren't really expecting to see those types of things. Yeah. And so it's cool to like look back on that and sort of see like, okay, this is sort of like the early stages of what most TV shows would do now,
That's cool. And then we move on to the final one, which is, and remind me of the name of the last podcast.
Falling with Style.
Falling with Style.
Yeah.
Now, what's the reason for that title?
So that's a line that Buzz Lightyear has in the first Toy Story.
That's right, it is.
Yeah.
What do you think about that movie that's coming out?
The thing with Pixar is that they're all good.
They're all good.
Even when the movies are bad, they're good. Like the worst. That's the thing that I've learned with doing this podcast. Like the worst Pixar movies, which I would say are Good Dinosaur and like Cars 2.
Okay.
They're still like well-made movies in certain regards. I kind of really strongly dislike The Good Dinosaur, but I can't even say in good faith that it's a bad movie.
What's The Good Dinosaur about? I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? Because nobody...
What is that?
Yeah, it just kind of came and went because it was very boring. It was a movie about a dinosaur kid dinosaur who was looking for his parents. Yeah, and he befriends a little human child.
Yo, I've never, this is not ringing a bell.
That's
crazy.
It wasn't advertised very much, and I think probably, honestly, probably for good reason, because it's a mess of a movie, and I don't really like it. And I wouldn't recommend it. I think it's very boring.
Yeah.
But it's technologically, it nails a lot of stuff, and there are certainly good emotional moments and stuff in it. It's not a bad movie. It's just it's very bad.
I didn't need that. I'm sorry. What was that? So, shout out. I guess Google's celebrating Route 66 today.
Oh, okay.
Why? Why did that just happen?
Oh my god, that's so funny.
But yeah, Pixar movies. Yeah, they are really good, aren't they?
Right. A bad Pixar movie is still good by a lot of other metrics.
Yeah.
And I don't care about your movie right now.
Yeah.
But it'll probably be good. It'll probably when I watch it, it'll be that was good.
It's just an interesting way to travel for them.
Yeah, it's an odd choice. I still don't get it. Maybe there's a better. Maybe when you watch it, it'll be it's all clear now, and I get why they did this. At this point, it's a weird choice.
Hopefully. So how'd that process be going? So once a month, and y'all choose and it's in order.
Yeah, it's in order of Pixar. So it's part of the reason we did it. So when we started that one, that's me and Doug again. So that was
Shout out to Doug, man.
Huh?
Shout out to Doug.
Yeah. Doug does 99% of the editing on the podcast that we do together too. So the reason I can afford to do this is because he's doing the editing on those podcasts. Doug is great to work with and just fantastic. We work so well together. We've never had any drama or issues between the two of us, which I think is really rare for most people who have to work that closely together creatively.
And for 4 years.
Right, yeah, no issues and no, I think we're always on the same wavelength for what we want, and when we're sort of let's not do this, let's take a break from this or something like that.
Yeah.
We're always on the same wavelength. But he's a big Pixar fan, and like very knowledgeable on it. And like a lot of the pop culture stuff that we've done is usually the other way around. It's usually a thing that I was super obsessed with, and he's like not as knowledgeable on. And so to have that flip where it's sort of like, here's something that there was a lot of Pixar movies that I hadn't seen, and even the ones that I had, I never read up on them. It was just not my thing. And that was a thing that he was very knowledgeable on. So it's sort of like, well, this is a great opportunity to do that where that sort of dynamic is flipped a little bit. And so it gave me an avenue to watch all the Pixar movies I haven't seen, and him to educate me on Pixar and sort of see the progression of like a modern day company as like their sort of storytelling and technology like evolves. Because Pixar is like really unique in that they are this, even though they're owned by Disney, Pixar itself is like this one company that's like always existed with many of the same people throughout it, and they've sort of like been at the forefront of a lot of things that have happened in movies, and especially in animation, and have sort of driven that, but have also had to respond to how things have changed at the same time. And so to sort of see that evolution from movie to movie, like there's like the visuals and the technology of it, it's just wild to see how things change from movie to movie when you're paying close attention to it. But even then, like just like it's interesting like how many Pixar movies like just had like so few women in them for a long time, and it seemed to be like eventually they kind of started responding to it, and now you have a crop of very diverse Pixar movies.
Some of the best ones are with the women in them.
Right, so it was interesting to sort of track that progression and like how they sort of had responded to the times and had to catch up with the times in some case, you know. And that's like the only thing we do where it's like a company, so it's like it's not one solid property or character, it's like a company doing different things but still run by the same kind of group of people. And that is sort of an interesting like trajectory to track.
That's the one thing too that people sometimes get confused. That Pixar is like its own separate thing, but it is owned by Disney. So like when it's like, oh, you know, Pixar, Disney, like I mean they're the same thing kinda. But not necessarily. Like
they're independent of Disney creatively, but you know, obviously Disney still writes the checks and still approves a lot of stuff. So. But I do think that like Pixar is different than like I think that Disney. I feel like I don't know. Doug might tell me that I'm wrong. I guess my feeling on it. It seems like the relationship Disney has with Pixar isn't the same as, like, say, Disney and Star Wars, because I think that Disney does have more influence on what's happening in Star Wars.
Right.
Whereas I think Disney has final say on Pixar things, but I think Pixar creatively, like, they are doing very much their own thing. And Disney just has to approve it or not approve it, you know.
Which, I mean, listen, when you have the track record as Pixar does, you kind of just let them do what they need to do. And then just be like, all right.
For sure.
Any favorites? Like
Inside Out, I think is still my favorite. That was my favorite going into it. And I don't know if that's going to change, honestly. I mean, I love a lot of the recent Pixar movies. I love Turning Red a ton.
That got killed for stupid reasons. Turning Red was the most recent one, right?
Yeah.
Where the one where the people were mad because the girl got a period.
Oh yeah. It's very good.
I was like, that's a real thing that happened. Why are y'all upset?
It's ridiculous, and it's such a fantastic movie. It's so fun. And it's like unlike any movie that Pixar has done, and unlike any movie I think in recent times too. That one is very high up there on the list for me too. We do rankings sometime. We've done rankings before, but I think those two are very high up there. The first Toy Story is high up there for me.
I mean,
you know, and
I think Tommy said that's his favorite movie.
Yeah. We had him on for Toy Story 3 actually. So yeah.
That's the Holocaust. That's the way I describe it. That's what happens in that movie. That's essentially what it is.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. Yeah, I think those at this point are my top 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about when do you ever feel like they don't know when to stop a series? Because I thought that about Toy Story 4 until I saw it. And I was like, this isn't that bad. I like Toy Story 4.
I think a thing that Doug pitched to me that I agree with now, having seen most Pixar movies, yeah, most of them at this point is I think they actually, it might seem like that, but I think they are pretty good about deciding like when to do a sequel. Like they don't do a sequel unless they have a reason to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's I think like it is weird to think that there are 4 Toy Story movies, but like all of those movies are doing wildly different things. Yeah. Even with the Cars movies, like I don't really like the Cars movies very much, but all 3 Cars movies are very, very different movies. Yeah. Like they're not just doing repeats of what they just did, which I think is the danger of sequels, right? And even like Finding Dory to Finding Nemo, I think it was weird to do a sequel to Finding Nemo, but like Finding Dory is a very different movie than Finding Nemo. So like I appreciate it for that. So like they're not just, you know, remaking the same movie over and over again for the sequels, which is the danger, right? Like that's what you don't want. So like I think, which is why I'm like open to Lightyear, because it's sort of like we don't really know, we can't think of an idea for a Toy Story 5, so we're not going to do it. We did have a weird gonzo idea for something else that's Toy Story related. We're going to do that instead. It's like, you know, I'd rather that than just doing like a Toy Story again. Like, you know.
Yeah, that is the thing about sequels, man. It's just because you have to be careful that you're not just retreading old territory.
Yeah.
And I think the Cars movie had no issue with that, and then they started or the other thing that they do, which sucks, is when they started they're doing the same movie, but they just change it, planes.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
That wasn't Pixar, is the thing.
Okay, all right.
That was like it was like some Disney animation studio or something.
Okay.
So since they had the rights to it, so it could be in the same world, but it like wasn't a Pixar.
And I was like, guys, let's.
I don't think we're ever gonna do that on the podcast. I kind of want to, just to see how much of a shit show it is. But I don't think Doug wants us to ever touch that.
We're not talking about that. Okay. So Power Rangers, man.
Sure.
You are also a Power Rangers aficionado. Like that's the one thing from college. That was the one thing I was like, yo, he loves Power Rangers more than me. I think. Like when I was growing up, like, because he's still watching the series and stuff, man. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, obviously, you know, grew up with the originals. Mm-hmm. What made you keep watching? I think I stopped at the time he left.
Sure. I don't really know why. I never felt out on it, or at any point that like if I wasn't feeling it, like the next season would pull me back in. I think I was just always fascinated by it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching it since like day one, and I think like I liked the changes that they'd make season to season after a while. I think. Like so you know that's I think that's the thing that like turned a lot of kids off. I think, you know, when it sort of stopped being a phenomenon was because they started changing the cast every season, they did in like the Japanese series did.
Yep.
And you know, obviously, like there's a lot of positive reasons for it that make sense. Like it's a budgetary thing because you get a new cast every season. You don't have to re-up contracts for a following season, and also like you can sort of just refresh your story. Yeah. And especially since there's a new Sentai season they can adapt, like they can just do a new story that fits with that footage every time. And I think that I always thought that stuff was really interesting. I was always kind of excited to see what the new season was, and I think because it also allowed you to have like a complete story from beginning to end in a way that a lot of other kids shows often didn't, you know. Obviously, if you're watching like anime or something, maybe that was different because there was usually like a limited run. But like American kids shows, they would just run forever, and sometimes would just stop without an ending. And
just abruptly.
Right. And with Power Rangers, I think it was always really cool that it's like, no, you have one solid, like a big, heavy season of like 50 episodes, just like an anime that is a beginning, middle, and end, a complete arc to it. And then you move on to the next one, and there may or may not be crossovers, and there may or may not be like world tie-ins and stuff. And I think that I always thought that was really cool. And like I said, you know, there might be a season that like I didn't love, but then the season after it'll be like, oh, now they're in space. Well, that's cool. I love space, so I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
You know, so like and I think like just sticking with it as long as I did, like I think I was able to take the good and the bad, you know, equally with it. So I've seen all of them now. Some of them I like a lot less than others. Some of them are pretty awful. Some of them are amazing. Like it's a show that's long running. You're gonna get good and bad with it.
I mean that's the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
All right. I do want to. I'm trying to save because Dante loves Power Rangers.
Sure.
I kind of want him to come up here and interview at some point just to let you bounce off ideas and stuff.
Okay.
But I have two questions that I do want to ask you.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get those out, and that's what's your favorite Power Ranger ripoff? Because that was a thing, like huge thing in the '90s, where like everybody was like, "Oh, this is what people love. Let's just try to knock it off."
Yeah, well, and it's funny because, like, most of them did come from some Japanese material, sometimes that came before Power Rangers. Like, Masked Rider was adapted from Kamen Rider, which predates Power Rangers, predates Super Sentai, I think, roughly. Or maybe they're around the same time. But, yeah, like, that's always really interesting. And, like, most of them are, I say this with a lot of love, but most of them are garbage.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's, yeah,
absolutely.
And it's not even like, and it's not even a thing where like I fault like people working on it. It's because like, it's like you have to do what Power Rangers is doing. Find this Japanese show, find this tokusatsu show where it's people turning into some superheroes and use it. And sometimes it's like there's only a very limited amount of footage they have, or like Power Rangers was lucky in that like it was so long. It had already been a show that was so long running in Japan. There's already so many changes, and it was very kid friendly to adapt. But like other shows are harder to adapt. It's like one solo character. It's like weirder stuff with it.
Yeah.
Or like they've run out of footage really quickly. And like what do you do with that when you're a creator? You know.
Yeah.
So some of them are just garbage. But I really think I have two answers for this. Big Bad Beetleborgs.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that show. I think the thing that show did right is that it recognized that like these things are often very bad, so let's have fun with it and just make it a comedy show. And so it did such weird stuff. They're like in a haunted house with like a ghost and a werewolf and a mummy. Like has nothing to do with anything, but like it made it fun. Yeah. It's like they're like in I'm not very familiar with I think is that one that Metal Heroes that it's based on, or is that Mirror Troopers? I don't know. Whatever the Japanese show it's based on, I'm not familiar with it at all. Yeah. But I know whatever Big Bad Beetleborgs was, it wasn't that.
No.
and so they were just like, let's embrace that. They're kids, comic book powers with haunted houses, like whatever. Who cares? And I think that's the right approach to it. Like Power Rangers could do what it did. It could take things seriously or not seriously. There's not a lot of leeway. Pretty much any other Toku show just doesn't. And that show is just like, we're just going to be freaking weird with it. Who cares? Like, and I think that was a smart decision. It's not a good show, but I think it's a very fun show.
Yeah.
And just because it doesn't take itself seriously. I also say I haven't revisited it in a really long time. So it might not even be fun to watch. But I really think that I remember liking Mystic Knights of Tir-Na-Nog.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that was fully American. There was no Japanese background for that, and I just appreciate the swing of trying to do like a Toku show that wasn't based on any Japanese thing.
Shoot for the stars.
Yeah. And so like I'm sure it's not good, but like it's cool that they like tried to do that.
Yeah.
And sort of like the whole knight aesthetic to it was like that's something that wasn't really present in a lot of the Japanese shows at the time. So
that's how you can tell it's a westernized attempt.
Right. So they did something kind of cool with that, and I appreciate it for that. I think it's really cool that it existed.
That one. I think the other one that was like really bad was when they tried to do the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV series.
Yeah.
With the when they added the woman turtle.
Venus.
And I was like, nah, that's you've already ruined the aesthetic because they're all named after famous painters and sculptors, and I forgot what her name was.
It was Venus de Milo.
And I was like, I don't know. Is she? I'm not sure.
I don't. Is it? Yeah, like I think
but it messed up the lore.
A painting, maybe.
And the thing is, like, Power Rangers did a crossover with them too, right? Yep. So I was like, nah, I see what you're doing, but no.
Yeah, it would have been. I think that they. I don't really. I'm not a big like Ninja Turtles like person. Like I've seen plenty when I watch that show, but like I'm not. I don't really have any opinions about Ninja Turtles like one way or another. So like I was like fine with that show, but I do think that it was like cool idea to like add a woman to the cast.
Sure,
do it. But I think that I remember her not being written particularly well. Like I think it was just like her whole vibe was just I'm the girl and that's my whole personality, and it's like, well, that's not how you do that.
All right. Okay. And then this was the question I was really excited to ask you.
Yeah.
I was like, I think he'd have a fun time doing this. Give me your personal Power Ranger team from across the entire series.
Okay.
You can pick the 5 main ones and then 161.
Oh boy, I need to prepare for that. Okay, no, I can do that because there have been. One thing I'll say is that like the comics have mixed and matched teams before in fun ways, so like it's not unprecedented to do something like that. I want to try to be color coded too, but I know that makes it more challenging. I would have Tanya as from Power Rangers Zeo. She's the Zeo Yellow Ranger.
Yep.
I would have. This is going to be close to the Beyond the Grid team from the comics, but most people listening to this probably aren't going to know that, so it's fine that I can cheat a little bit. Tanya from Power Rangers Zeo, the Magna Defender, but the first Magna Defender from Power Rangers Lost Galaxy.
Okay.
He's either going to be the black one or the Sixth Ranger. I haven't decided how that's going to slot yet. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Jeez. I want TJ to be in there. He was the Turbo Red Ranger and the In Space Blue Ranger.
Yep.
And I don't know which form I would want him in for that. Oh, jeez. This is so hard. And I also don't want to just plug them all in from the same team either.
Yeah.
Jeez. Jen from Time Force is the Pink Ranger.
Okay.
Oh God.
Jen was the one that ended up, because there's only been one death in Power Rangers, right?
No, Kendricks was the one who died in Lost
Okay.
Galaxy. Yeah, which is my favorite season. And
Oh, there we go.
yeah. Actually, no. I think I like. No, Jen. I'll do Jen. And what colors am I missing? TJ can be red or blue. Oh God, you know what? I'm gonna cheat. TJ blue and then Andros red from In Space. So 2 In Space Rangers. And then as a 6th Ranger, let's see. I'm gonna throw in. This answer is gonna change like tomorrow. I'm
Probably.
sure. I'll rethink all of this stuff. 6th Ranger. Maybe I'll do something weird and have like. I mean, like Tommy is the easy answer, but I don't know if that would be my answer for that.
Right. Yeah.
Oh God, can I have a weird one?
Sure.
I'm
why
gonna
not?
do Billy from MMPR from Mighty Morphin.
Okay. Yeah.
But he gets what he should have gotten, and he should have been able to become the Gold Ranger in Zeo. He gets to become the Gold Ranger
Okay.
in my team as the 6th Ranger.
How did that? Because Jason ended up being the Gold Ranger. Now, what was the story behind it? Why you think?
So they in universe, their explanation was that Billy was going to be, but he wasn't able. Like the powers rejected his body because he was like soaked in these like photon particles from the command center exploding. Just some like bullshit.
Yeah.
Technical explanation. And I don't know the real reason why the creators didn't want him to be. I think it was to have a reason to bring Jason back, so they could have a 6th Ranger, and then you have like more of the original Rangers there.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of really bad behind the scenes stuff with David Yost. So it could have also just been a homophobic thing where it's just sort of like, well, we know you're gay now, so we don't want you to be a Ranger.
I hope that's not it, but I feel like that's probably what the issue is.
I think that might have been part of the decision making.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I saw him at what's called Galaxy Con recently.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
he seems like a cool guy.
Yeah, he seems really nice guy actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a I like that. I like that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like that
It's not as much of a mixture as I think I would want it to be.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of like later. That's mostly from like the first 7 years, but that's also like the stuff that I love. Like I have a lot of love for like the kind of Disney era of the show from the 2000s too, and the current season I think is really good too. But most of my favorite Rangers come from sort of that era, I think.
Do you follow the same we'll say gospel that Tommy is the greatest Ranger ever?
I have mixed. So that's a thing that like if you're outside of the insular Power Rangers fandom, that's an opinion that most people have. If you're inside the Power Rangers fandom, that's very controversial, and you would get yelled at for it.
Really?
Sure. Well, because I think the thing is like the thing about Tommy is that he's not a particularly fleshed out character. Like
sure.
The thing that makes him cool is that he had a lot of cool powers and he lasted a long time.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of Rangers who have come after him that have done similar things to who he was, but like been written better because the writing got better on the show as it went along.
True.
And and a lot of people I think reject. Like I think part of it is just an inferiority complex within the fandom because it's sort of like everyone knows Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and a lot of fans are like, no, but the later seasons are better. You should watch those instead.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if you want to treat it like, and it's just like, well, people are gonna like what they want to like. Who cares?
Yeah, it's a clash. It's a clash of generations concept.
It's
Yeah.
fine. So I think Tommy's I have no issues whenever they bring him back for reunions and anniversary specials and stuff, because they have multiple times. I think it's fun. Why not? It's cool.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to like honor multiple seasons of the show.
Yeah.
But I don't think that he's the best Ranger in that I don't think he's the most interesting one.
Sure.
So I don't know how far up on my list of favorites he necessarily ranks, but like obviously there's going to be like a lot of love and nostalgia because he was part of so much of the show, and like a lot of stuff he did was very cool, you know? Like, so, I don't know, I think he's sort of like his own weird tier, I think. Like, he's almost like kind of, like, I don't think he could be on a ranking because like he represents so much of Power Rangers.
He's like his mythos as a Power Ranger like kind of supersedes the show in a sense. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. He's had some of them. Even though like the right, like if you look back, because Dante watches the show, and I used to, you know, like, what? Let's watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the originals. Yeah. He's like, yeah. And I'm watching the show, I'm like, oh my god. Yeah. This is awful. Yeah. But he had some of the greatest moments. Like, I tell anybody who wants to hear it when it's like, you know, which one of these is the most badass? And it's a Green Ranger, and it's like, hey, yo, fam, listen. You gotta understand that he skipped school. And he went and fought them 1-on-5, went into their Megazord and kicked them out.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty wild.
Like, he was a menace.
Yeah.
He was a menace. Uh-huh. And the White Ranger with the talking sword, like, I had the toy growing up, man, so like, for me, like, you're like, nostalgia, just, you know, he just had this cool factor. He took Kimberly from Jason. Like, you know, like, he had everything. Yeah. You know? Oh man, that's funny. Okay, let me send you out here on this. I like to do like a I've been ever since the other day when I heard myself say it, is it desert island or deserted island? Which is it?
I guess it can be either, because it can be an island that is a desert, or it's an island that is deserted.
You know what I'm saying? It's been boggling my mind for like the last 2 weeks. Yeah. Am I saying it wrong? You're on a deserted island. Uh-huh. I like to do the deserted island question, and we do one TV series, one movie, one book, one meal for the rest of your life, and one album.
Oh my god, okay. Let's start again. TV series,
book,
movie, album.
And one meal for the rest of your life. And you like video games too. Let's add one video game as well.
Okay. TV series, god, that's hard. I would want to get a long running one.
Sure.
So it would either be Power Rangers or The Simpsons, and I'm not sure. I might go with The Simpsons actually beyond Power Rangers, even though there's slightly less. There are less episodes of The Simpsons than I think there are Power Rangers. I think because they're roughly the same age. Yeah. But Simpsons would cover because I have like childhood nostalgia for early Simpsons, but also there's a lot of Simpsons that I haven't seen, and also the ones that I have seen I love to death and I can and do rewatch them over and over again. Yeah. So I might actually go with The Simpsons. Okay. Movie. That one's hard. Yeah. I guess I would go with one that's safe that I know that I can watch over and over again. Maybe Back to the Future, because I can watch that over and over and over again when I can. Album. That's really hard. I'm gonna skip that one for now, actually. Okay. TV show, movie, book. You said. Mm-hmm. Damn. I don't reread books a lot is the thing. So, can I do like a compendium of something? Sure. I wonder. No, that doesn't help though, because I can't think of what that would be. Oh my god, this is so hard. Meal, I would say. I'm just jumping around a lot.
That's fine.
Meal, I would do. This is gonna be weird. It's going to be chicken and waffles with a side of rusted Brussels sprouts. I wouldn't eat those normally together, but like that would cover multiple things.
Yeah.
And like a Lucky Charms beer from Strange Ways.
Hey, shout out to Strange Ways, man.
Yeah. So that would cover kind of all of that. Album and book. Why are those so?
Why don't you go to the video game? Hopefully.
Video game.
Take your mind off of that.
I'm gonna do Mass Effect Legendary Edition because then I get 3 games out of it.
That's smart.
I love Mass Effect. Yeah, cool. So that was an easy one. Jeez. Album. You know what? I'm gonna do like the album. It's not even gonna be like a band. It's gonna be like just a compilation of like chill wave music because I'll never get tired of that, and then I can really just kind of play that in the background.
Okay.
And book is what I'm still stuck on. Should I just do like a comic book or something?
Why not? It's a book.
Because I love books, but I wouldn't really. There's not books that I would necessarily revisit a lot.
Yeah.
I want to do one of the Ultimate Spider-Man omnibuses.
Okay.
I don't know how much that would cover, but
there you go.
That'll give me a lot of comics to look at, and then I get art with it too.
You did it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's a hard question.
So
it's a hard question because like you have to take everything that you do like and kind of narrow it down. Like,
well, and like some people probably do have like I'm sure that there are definitely people who are going to have like their one album that they would always revisit, and I just like don't really have that for some reason. Like I have a lot of music that I re-listen to, but I don't have like an album.
Yeah.
That's like my thing, and like same with book too. I know a lot of people reread books, and I just don't reread books a lot.
That one downstairs, she would have hers immediately.
Yeah.
Hers is The Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a good choice. Yeah. I wish there probably is one. That is something that I kind of would think about though, because I don't even really know what I would call my favorite book at this point.
Yeah.
Because it's changed so much as I've gotten older. You know, my tastes have changed, and I've read a lot of like good ones recently that are really good. But like when I consider that my favorite, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
At Close Vino, man, we like to rate our wines. We like to rate them and let people know if that we should buy them. So, what did you think of? What the heck was this called? Ecco Domani, man.
It's fine. I don't.
That's fine.
It's totally fine. I mean, if you like
1 out of 5 glasses, what would you give it?
out of 5, like a 3.5. Like
Sure.
right down the middle. It's like it's nothing special. It's not bad. Like I drank plenty of it.
Yeah.
And I don't drink a lot of white wine, so like you know that's so my palate isn't great for white wine, but it also I enjoy drinking it. But when I want to seek it out again, probably not.
Right. So with that being said, I feel like it's a solid 2.5 for me. Like, would I reach out of my way to buy it again? Probably not. But it's not bad. Like it's a solid wine.
Boring label. I wish the label.
Yeah, you know, like
Not a fan.
I like the color scheme, but not necessarily the label.
Like I don't even know is it because it's an E? I guess that's what it is.
Guess.
I don't know.
Let me see what the style, elegance, and sophistication. Our great wines from some of the finest vineyards in Italy's renowned Del Venezie region. Tropical fruits and aromas and floral. I guess, man. Anyway, I want to thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah.
I inspired to be, as good as you with this thing.
Well, thanks.
You gotta. First of all, I want your beard. I can't get that. I've been trying for years. It's just it's not happening for me. It's just this.
Got a fake one? I don't know.
Yeah. Go to Party City and just like
It's a spirit gum. There you go.
But yeah, man, like you do so many podcasts and you keep up with them, and your process of being able to had so many going at one time is really inspiring for me. So I'm just trying to get like you, man.
Cool. Well,
trying to get like you.
Hey, I love the setup that you have. I don't have a podcast studio, so I do all my stuff virtually because I'm not inviting people over to do it. So I appreciate that you're like able to do that and pull it off and everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, man. Just trying to find a way to quit my real job. Anyway, this is the part where I let people, give your socials out, let people know where all your podcasts are, man. Let them know.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter. That's the place where I'm probably the most active at Derek v. Gayle. Walloping Web Snappers. Find that anywhere you hear podcasts. We have a podcast feed, Walloping Web Pod, on Twitter and on Instagram and Facebook as well. Though we don't use the Facebook very much, but on Twitter and Instagram, Walloping Web Pod. We also post any episodes of Falling with Style or updates about that on that feed as well. And if you want to visit the website, wallopingwebsnappers.com has an archive of all of our episodes of Walloping Web Snappers. We organize them by show as well, so if you want to just simply see our coverage of one particular show, you can check it out there, and our episodes of Falling with Style are there. For Gimmicks, you can find it on Twitter and Instagram at GimmicksPod, and also, again, anywhere you get your podcasts. But if you want the latest updates on anything that's going on with there, just follow me on Twitter at Derek B. Gayle.
Nice, man. Any last words for the people, man? Any parting words?
Parting words. TV's good.
Yes.
Weird TV is even better.
Nice. Yearbook. I wish we could go back to our yearbook and just put that.
Have a great summer. TV's weird.
Be sure to follow the Clues podcast Instagram. Be sure to like and share the podcast. Give us a 5-star review. Give Derek's podcast 5-star reviews, man. Leave reviews. We like feedback. It's kind of a creative thing, man.
Yeah.
We really need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
we really need that.
For sure.
But yeah, man, just make sure you follow us and make sure to continue to stick around with us. But most importantly, don't forget to drink up.
I got the juice, don't need no proof. 100 like the rum I drink that got me over you. And all your nonsense we all subject to. I found my lane and mind my business like I'm supposed to do. Let's have a toast for all the obstacles that gotta sit. I put my glass up in the air to stimulate the cheers. Not because we made it, but because we making it. I savor the moment, the bouquet forever evident. Yeah. In my realm, I watch the times go by. I got the world in my hands, but I can't tame the sky.